All right, guys, so we're going to go to the final opposition from Wayfarer. This is in response to Lively's motion to exclude the testimony of... She's kind of like a social media manipulation expert in this case. She's a rebuttal expert, Nicole Alexander. I have been very critical so far of Nicole Alexander. Not of her, like her report, we haven't seen it, but I did go through her entire deposition testimony. It took something like I think it was like 9 2-hour videos to get through it, and I read through every single word, and it was a car crash. Not, I mean, she may be, and I've always said this, I'm very open to the possibility that she's actually incredibly knowledgeable and very, very good. But in a deposition, she did not come across as knowledgeable or very good at what she was doing. And that is going to be a problem. And it's certainly going to be like when she's on trial. When she's on the stand at trial. If she comes across in that same way, it is not going to persuade the jury. Wayfarer need to get that kind of cleaned up. They need to get her prepared for all that. But also, Lively now has a deposition which she can use to impeach her. Quite a lot. This is going to be the first time now I've read something where Wayfarer, because this is what's going to have to happen at trial, right? Wayfarer are going to have to explain and kind of rehabilitate her. They're going to have to explain to the jury why she is credible, why she's knowledgeable, and why her opinions and her report rebutting Lively's experts, is persuasive. So this is the first time I've seen something from Wayfarer to tell me why this witness is a good witness, and I've been waiting for it. It's 35 pages long, so kind of middling, really. Long, not long, but longer than some. And obviously that's because Lively spent a lot longer on her motion to have her excluded, so it's kind of got to be met with the same energy, really. It sounds like she's quite an important rebuttal expert for Wayfarer, so Wayfarer are going to want to keep her in. So let's go into this. Lively devoted a full 35 pages. Wayfarer have done the same. Lively devotes a full 35 pages of Daubert briefing to defendant's rebuttal expert Nicole Alexander in an attempt to ensure the jury hears only the one-sided presentation of Lively's purported experts on social media manipulation. Lively's motion takes a shotgun approach, raising virtually every quibble. Oh my God, they're using my word today. They're using quibble. This has got to be Ellen again. I feel like there's some kind of energy between us. Lively's motion takes a shotgun approach, raising virtually every quibble she can find, no matter how strained or trivial. Her arguments are meritless. If Lively's experts are permitted to present their opinions, defendants are entitled to rebut. Moreover, in many instances, Lively's arguments are equally, if not more, applicable to her own experts, Maislin and Clutter, and thus serve only to provide further reasons for their exclusion. Okay. Background and summary of opinions. So they start with the qualifications. Alexander is an expert in marketing, digital ecosystems, and data analytics. She holds an executive MBA jointly conferred by NYU Stern School of Business, the London School of Economics, so I know LSE, and HEC Paris, as well as a master's degree from the University of Cambridge. Is that Cambridge in the UK? Because that's like a big deal of a university. A master's degree from the University of Cambridge relating to large language models and artificial intelligence. Alexander currently serves on the faculty of Columbia University and has taught courses at NYU in the field of marketing and technology. Over the course of her career, Alexander has conducted or supervised more than 200 digital reputation analyses for entertainment, technology, consumer goods, and financial services clients, applying advanced analytics to distinguish organic discourse from manufactured narratives and to quantify the commercial impact of reputation shifts in digital environments. Alexander performed analysis of this sort as global head of marketing at Meta for business and product marketing and in executive roles at Ipsos and Nielsen. She has extensive experience investigating potential indicators of inauthentic activity, and her work has included rigorous quantitative and statistical analysis. Then we go on to assignment and scope of work. Defendants retained Alexander to rebut the testimony of Lively's proffered experts Dina Maislin, Aaron Carlotta, and Ashley Humphreys concerning alleged manipulation of social media and alleged harm to Lively's reputation and consumer brands. To that end, Alexander collected a dataset of 43,992 social media posts from Twitter or X, YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, and TikTok, all related to Lively and from the period January 2024 through October 2025. She then employed a comprehensive multi-platform analytical framework based on her professional experience and relevant research designed to evaluate whether observed patterns of social media engagement exhibited the structural, temporal, and content-based characteristics typically associated with manufactured campaigns, or whether they instead aligned with well-documented patterns of organic public interest in celebrity news and entertainment media events. Okay, so meta-analysis. I'm not even going to pretend. I'm not a tech expert. I just need to sort of put that across here. So I'm probably not going to understand some of this. But I always I do get comments from people who do, and I really appreciate that, by the way. So if anyone wants to weigh in, I'd love to hear from you. Alexander performed a meta-analysis designed to assess the patterns of social media activity across platforms. This cross-platform temporal framework is critical because manipulation campaigns and organic events produce distinctly different timing signatures when viewed collectively. Coordinated manipulation campaigns typically exhibit inconsistent cross-platform temporal patterns with staggered timing, uneven platform targeting, and irregular distribution due to the technical complexities of executing campaigns across multiple platforms with different bot detection systems and content requirements. Alexander observed a spike in activity in August 2024, coinciding with the film's release date, and looked at multiple diagnostic indicators to investigate whether the activity was manipulated or reflected organic user activity. For instance, all 5 platforms exhibited virtually simultaneous activity surges in early 2024, coinciding precisely with the film's theatrical release and premiere events. Tight temporal synchronization of this sort is diagnostic of a common external trigger, i.e. the film release, driving attention across all platforms simultaneously rather than sequential campaign rollouts typical of manufactured operations. Okay, that's a pretty good explanation. That helps. In addition, September 2024 activity declined to 837 items across all platforms, representing a dramatic reduction from the August peak and returning to near baseline levels. And this is a point I have made, right? And I think this is kind of saying, hey, well, it spiked during the premiere and then declined again. I think what happened, right? And I have said this before, so if you're hearing this again, I'm sorry, but I will, not everyone watches every single video. So for those who haven't heard me say this, I'm going to say this again. What I think happened, what I think this smear campaign is, right, and I'm using air quotes here, I think a lot of people hadn't actually heard of Blake Lively, right? Or maybe they'd heard of it as Ryan Reynolds' wife. I'm sure there was people were aware of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants and Gossip Girl, but how long ago was that? It was, way back. And she hadn't been doing anything particularly acting. She kept taking lots of time out from her acting career, whether it would be due to a pregnancy or, to let her husband, because her husband had a role which was generating more money. We know that we've seen the text messages, right, where she did that a lot. So there was lots of gaps in her acting career. And even when she did, do a movie, it really didn't go anywhere. It was not like a hit at all. So that's why I snark every time someone, her counsel try to refer to her as an A-list actress. No, you're not. Not even in your wildest dreams. But I genuinely think, right, this book was a huge success. Justin Baldoni had a big success with 5 Feet Apart and Clouds. I think they wanted to see how he would handle this, and they're quite optimistic. And this is stuff I've said about myself, by the way, in my Motion to Quash. This is me in the run-up to the release of the movie, and I think a lot of people felt like this, right? But I think when the movie premiered and maybe people saw some of her marketing skills, like location share, I do think that people then started to Google, who is this woman? And then all of her history came back and smacked her in the face. The tranny slurs, the plantation wedding, the allure of antebellum website, and overly priced muffins that had some kind of nod to, colonial times. The same with her, all of the all of the shit, basically. They obviously saw the interview with Shusty, and there would have been like so many things, and the comments about when she said that she referred to, I think it was Leighton Meester, as being a monkey or something because she was born when her mother was in prison. And it's just a lot of really nastiness, and just bitchiness. And I think people didn't like it. And that was it. As far as they went, like, that was them getting they'd actually done a research, like, oh, let's Google this person. Don't really know much about her. Didn't like what they saw and voiced that. And then it declined again in September because no one was really interested. Because at the end of the day, right, I think the weight of the film, the success of the film was not due to Blake Lively. It was due to her having people like, name dropping Taylor Swift, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman, so on and so forth. Her constant name dropping of friends who are incredibly popular in their respective fields. But it really, her, no. And I think obviously the success of the film come in big part from the success of the book. But also I think there was success from Justin Baldoni too. And people were excited for it, and that's why it did so well. And I do not believe it was anything really, my opinion, I don't think it was overly much to do with Blake Lively. If anything, people didn't like her. They didn't think she was right for the role. They thought she was too old for the role. And, she was not a fit of the character. And she made every interview entirely about herself and made the film entirely about herself. And people did not like that. So I think the backlash that what she thinks is a smear campaign is actually just people actually looking up to find out who she is, because this was her biggest film to date. And people's natural curiosity, it's like, oh, this person is a lead in this film. Okay, then. Well, I don't know who they are. What else have they been in? And then the interviews pop up. And then you quickly come to the conclusion, you either love this person or, yeah, I don't like her. And that's what's happened here, I think. Okay. Yeah, so in addition, September 2024 activity declined to 837 items across all platforms, representing a dramatic reduction from the August peak and returning to near baseline levels. This rapid attenuation is characteristic of short-term news-driven events and contradicts theories of sustained manipulation campaigns, which typically maintain elevated activity through continued resource investment and messaging discipline. Exactly, because why would they choose to smear her right around the premiere of the film, which is success they were all relying on, and why did it suddenly go away after the film premiered? It makes no sense. It doesn't sound overly like retaliation. There's no... I mean, she's saying it's still ongoing, but honestly, I don't know how she could write the complaints that she has and then not question why people don't like her and don't believe her. Finally, the temporal decay pattern following the August spike exhibited smooth exponential decline characteristic of organic attention cycles documented in academic literature on entertainment publicity events, and by October 2024, all platforms had returned to baseline activity levels and no platform exhibited anomalous sustained elevation that would suggest ongoing manipulation. Accordingly, in Alexander's opinion, the data overwhelmingly indicates that the integrated cross-platform pattern observed here is entirely consistent with coordinated manipulation and instead exhibits textbook characteristics of organic viral spread driven by a major external stimulus, in this case the theatrical release of a highly anticipated film featuring a high-profile celebrity. Temporal analysis. Alexander also observed that while the August 2024 spike in social media activity was significant, there was a comparable spike in December 2024 when the lawsuit was filed, and again in October 2025 during renewed legal news coverage. These jumps occurred in direct alignment with real-world events driving public attention. Notably, the lawsuit-related spike exceeded the August film release-driven spike, reinforcing that the increases were organic and event responsive. If August 2024 had been the result of a coordinated manipulation campaign, there would be no clear explanation for why authentic legal developments later generated even higher activity. Yeah, exactly. This is good. Alexander proceeded to analyze different signatures of manipulation or of organic publicity-driven virality described below, which overwhelmingly aligned with organic activity. Okay. Sentiment analysis. Alexander used the Burt family transformer-based language model to classify the social media posts in her dataset by sentiment toward lively, positive, negative, or neutral. This classification directly contradicted the theory that August 2024 activity reflected a coordinated negative campaign. In total, across all platforms during August 2024, approximately 63% positive, 20% neutral, and 17% negative sentiment. This distribution is consistent with normal engagement patterns for celebrity-related content during publicity cycles. In addition, Alexander performed a time series forecasting analysis using regressions to determine that the August 2024 spike would not have a lasting impact on the long-term sentiment trajectory, and that sentiment would instead revert to levels expected if the spike had never occurred. Alexander concluded that this evidence strongly indicates that the August 2024 spike reflected genuine public interest amplified by legitimate publicity surrounding a major film release, rather than manufactured negativity orchestrated by the defendants, and that sentiment toward Blake Lively returned to its pre-campaign baseline and has remained stable since, which contradicts claims of sustained reputational harm. Content analysis. Alexander found that the diversity in discussion topics and the natural language variance metrics, including vocabulary diversity, syntactic complexity, and stylistic variation, all fell within expected ranges for organic user-generated content. She also analysed the 4 alleged seeded narratives identified by Maislin and determined that the very low prevalence of these narratives in the social media data contradicts Maislin's manipulation theory. Consequently, the content patterns observed by Alexander aligned with organic engagement, not coordination. Okay, I'm really interested to read her report, because if that is really good, because this sounds good when presented like this, it sounds good. Then the issue may just be that she's quite nervous when she testifies, but that is that is something that she will have to overcome. Okay, I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued. Engagement network diagnostics. Whereas organic viral content diffuses through social networks following predictable patterns shaped by natural information sharing behavior, coordinated campaigns exhibit distinctive structural signatures, centralized amplification from small numbers of high-influence nodes, artificial temporal synchronization, abnormally rapid propagation speeds, and network clustering patterns consistent with bot networks or paid influencer seeding. As a result, Alexander conducted comprehensive network structure analysis on 3 platforms that provide sufficient API access for network mapping and calculated multiple network diagnostic metrics, including network density, the proportion of probable connections that actually exist, degree centrality, the extent to which specific nodes dominate information flow, clustering coefficients, the degree to which users form tightly interconnected subgroups characteristic of coordinated activity, and betweenness centrality, identifying key bridge nodes that connect otherwise separate network communities. The results consistently indicated decentralized, diffuse engagement patterns entirely consistent with organic word-of-mouth spread rather than orchestrated amplification. For instance, the top 10 accounts on X ranked by retweet frequency collectively represented less than 5% of total mentions, which is inconsistent with the coordinated use of amplifier accounts. The network density metric indicated a sparse, naturally dispersed network structure that is characteristic of organic viral spread across large, loosely connected audiences, rather than the dense, tightly clustered networks typical of coordinated bot activity or astroturfing campaigns, and the clustering coefficient analysis revealed values consistent with random organic networks rather than the high clustering characteristic of coordinated groups operating in concert. Wow, that was a lot. I didn't overly know what most of that meant, but it was a lot. Furthermore, I mean, I kind of get it. No, I kind of I know what they're saying, but the specific terms are, I'm not overly familiar with them. Furthermore, various account level diagnostics such as account creation dates, follower to follow-in ratios, posting frequencies, and engagement histories all fell within normal ranges for authentic users, with no evidence of bot-like behavior patterns. There were also no anomalous geographical clusters that might suggest coordinated seeding from troll farm locations or click farm operations. The absence of these coordination signatures provided strong empirical evidence against the manipulation hypothesis. So this is interesting. They're explaining basically, all the analysis she did to show that actually it was organic. The users were, real people. They were not bots. And whilst they're using the technical terms, I'm getting a feel for what it means in like trying to imagine it social media. And presented like this, it's very persuasive. I'm engaged. I like it. Okay. Comparative benchmarking. Alexander also conducted comparative benchmarking of the observed patterns against documented characteristics of known coordination campaigns in academic literature and industry case studies. She identified a number of diagnostic signatures of manipulation campaigns from the literature and her professional experience, many of which are described above, including centralized amplification hubs, temporal synchronization, sentiment homogeneity, linguistic templates, and new account clustering. Alexander determined that these diagnostic signatures were absent from the data and that instead the observed patterns aligned consistently with documented characteristics of organic viral events driven by entertainment publicity. Alleged commercial harm. Based on social media sentiment toward Lively and her companies, the company's internal business records, the significant commercial success of a major film starring Lively, as well as other factors, Alexander opined that the evidence was inconsistent with Lively's theory that she suffered reputational damage or commercial harm from the alleged manipulation campaign. Okay. Okay, so methodological shortfalls of Maeslin's use of AI. Alexander further opines that Maeslin's conclusions are not sound because they are based on her flawed application of the GPT-4o large language model, an artificial intelligence tool for the purpose of classifying social media posts. Maeslin's implementation of the AI model exhibits numerous methodological shortcomings that fundamentally undermine the reliability and validity of her conclusions. These shortcomings include Maeslin's failure to disclose important parameters used for the AI model, failure to disclose the development of prompts used to instruct the AI model, reliance on a single model without testing alternatives, failure to validate the AI model's results with a sufficiently sized sample, low agreement rates between the AI model's results and the human reviewers, unreliable emotion to sentiment mapping methodology, and failure to account for various technical constraints. These are foundational flaws that undermine the reliability and validity of Dr. Maeslin's conclusions. Alexander further observes that there is a scaling inconsistency in plaintiff's theory. The limited number of supposed markers Dr. Carlotta identifies in his report is irreconcilable with the sweeping 1.1 million post sentiment shift that Dr. Maeslin asserts based on the results of her AI model. Thus, the totality of the data is more coherently explained by normal, high-volume, news-driven engagement surrounding a major film release, not by coordinated manipulation. Lively does not challenge the admissibility of this testimony in her Daubert motion. Whoops. Rebuttal to Humphrey's opinions. Alexander also addresses Humphrey's argument that the alleged damage to Lively's reputation warrants a paid remedial communication campaign. Alexander opines the performance of Lively's consumer brands and Lively's ownership of an Instagram account with a massive number of followers counsels against resorting to paid media. In addition, Humphrey's model of social media impressions inflates the alleged damage to Lively's reputation because it aggregates exposures across multiple platforms without deduplicating individuals, thereby overstating the scale of the exposed audience and therefore the magnitude of any potential reputational response. Lively does not challenge the admissibility of this testimony in her Daubert motion. Enumerated opinions. In another section of her report, Alexander lists her opinions related to social media manipulation and commercial harm for ease of reference. These opinions can be summarized as follows. Opinion 1. The observed social media activity was consistent with organic public discourse rather than coordinated manipulation. Opinion 2. The August 2024 spike coincided with the film release and followed patterns characteristic of major entertainment publicity cycles rather than of manipulation. Opinion 3. Sentiment analysis shows that social media conversations about Lively were predominantly positive, which is inconsistent with the coordinated negative campaign, and the time series forecasting analysis shows no lasting impact on sentiment trajectory. Opinion 4. Network structure analysis was consistent with organic spread rather than coordinated activity. Opinion 5. Cross-platform meta-analysis shows public interest in an external stimulus rather than manufactured activity. Opinion 6. The signatures of coordinated manipulation campaigns were systematically absent from the dataset. Opinion 7. Content analysis was inconsistent with coordinated campaigns. Opinion 8. There was no measurable commercial harm to Lively's brand partnerships or business ventures. Opinion 9. The methodologies Alexander applied meet Daubert's standards for reliability. Opinion 10. The December 2024 spike further confirms that social media activity was related to major news events regardless of any alleged manipulation campaign. Opinion 11. Lively's business records show positive performance, which is inconsistent with substantial consumer response to the alleged negative narratives. Okay, so now we're going to get into the arguments. Alexander offers proper rebuttal testimony. There is no merit to Lively's argument that Alexander offers affirmative opinions in the guise of rebuttal. The sole basis for Lively's argument is that Alexander used a different methodology and a different data set from Maislin to conclude that social media activity during the relevant period was organic rather than manipulated. However, Alexander was not required to use the same methodology as Maislin. To the contrary, it is well established that an expert may rely on new methodologies for the purpose of rebutting or critiquing the opinions of the opposing party's expert witness. And that's important, right? So she hasn't got to do the same analysis using the same methodology. But, and this is what Lively did have an issue with, and not unfairly, was both witnesses from both sides have to explain their methodology, i.e. what were the parameters. In Alexander's case, it's like, which app did you use? And she kept saying the latest one. Well, the latest one may have been updated in the days or weeks or months since her deposition. Since her report was written. So, like, stating the actual version number, so on and so forth, the data release, giving some information as to what version of that app, because the experts can and should try to recreate the results in the same way that the opposing expert got them, so then they can start pulling apart any flaws, or if they didn't get the same results, even like, oh, how did your results say this when I did it exactly as you said? This is what I got. Can you explain that? So that for the purpose of giving an opinion as to why there were spikes in activity, no, Alexander did not need to use the same methodology as Maislin, but for the purposes of rebutting Maislin's methodology and statistical analysis, she has to recreate. That's part of it anyway. She has to recreate she has to try and recreate the results, basically. So that's what that is. But I think it sounds like, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but it does sound like Lively went further and said, well, she used a different methodology to Mason, so therefore blah 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 blah, which is not the case at all. She's entitled to use a different methodology and should. Okay. Rebuttal evidence is properly admissible when it will explain, repel, counteract, or disprove the evidence of the adverse party, and that is precisely the function of Alexander's testimony. Alexander's testimony concerns the same subject matter as Maislin's and Clutter's, namely the question of whether social media commentary concerning Lively was organic or manipulated, and reaches a different conclusion. Nothing more is required. The cases that Lively cites are inapposite because they concern purported rebuttal reports that strayed far afield from any response to the opinions expressed in the adversary's initial reports and were not even consistent with those opinions. Alexander's testimony is relevant and helpful. Lively grossly mischaracterizes Alexander's testimony in order to portray it as irrelevant and unhelpful. First, Lively repeatedly claims that Alexander admitted at her deposition that her dataset was not representative. In fact, Alexander testified that no expert, including Maislin, could ensure that their social media datasets were representative, given the practical limitations on access to such data. If Alexander is right, then Lively's experts should not be permitted to testify either. Lively cannot weaponize Alexander's scientific realism and humility for the purpose of excluding Alexander alone. Second, Lively claims that Alexander's analysis is untethered to the facts of the case because she supposedly did not consider emails and other documents produced in discovery concerning defendants' alleged social media campaign. In fact, Alexander was aware of those documents, since she reviewed Lively's complaint, expert report, and discovery responses that discussed them at length. Alexander acknowledges that Lively and her experts rely on these documents to make claims about defendants' conduct, but the purpose of Alexander's analysis is to test these claims using independent data sources, platform-level inspection, and industry-standard analytics. This is entirely proper and ensures that Alexander's opinions are based on her areas of expertise. It is not the province of an expert to review and opine on the contents of emails produced in discovery, as Lively's experts purport to do. An analysis of that sort is unhelpful to the jury and usurps its role, serves merely as a vehicle for attorney argument, and adds nothing to the expert's technical analysis. Yes, that's very good. Yes. Third, Lively claims that Alexander fails to answer the ultimate question because she does not address whether defendants manipulated social media in August 2024. That is false. Throughout her report, Alexander opines that defendants did not manipulate social media. In suggesting otherwise, Lively engages in sleight of hand. How many times has someone heard me say in a video when I'm reading one of Lively's filings, oh, here we go, wordplay, sleight of hand. She does it all the time. Lively quotes portions of Alexander's report and deposition in which Alexander explains that the film's release coincided with the August 2024 spike on social media, which suggests it may have caused the spike, but Alexander cannot definitively establish that the film's release was the cause. In other words, Alexander could not rule out all other possibilities, but Alexander did rule out the possibility that matters, namely the theory that defendants manufactured a social media campaign against Lively. Alexander's testimony is therefore directly relevant to Lively's claims. Lively also misconstrues Alexander's analysis when she argues that Alexander merely compared the timing of the film's release to the spike in social media activity. Alexander did much more than that, performing many other analyses in order to reach her conclusion that defendants did not manipulate social media. It is Maislin and Clutter whose analysis boils down to an inference from timing, not Alexander. Lively's argument is therefore an argument for excluding her own experts. Awesome. Alexander is amply qualified. Lively faces an uphill battle in arguing that Alexander lacks sufficient qualifications to testify as an expert. Courts within the Second Circuit have liberally construed expert qualification requirements when determining if a witness can be considered an expert, and have emphasized that an expert should not be required to satisfy an overly narrow test of her own qualifications. Social media opinions. There is no serious question that Alexander is qualified to opine that social media evidence shows organic user activity rather than coordinated manipulation. Alexander's expertise derives from both her extensive work experience and her formal education. As Alexander explained in her report, over the course of my career, I have conducted or supervised more than 200 digital reputation analysis for entertainment, technology, consumer goods, and financial services clients, applying advanced analytics to distinguish organic discourse from manufactured narratives and to quantify the commercial impact of reputation shifts in digital environments. Right, great. This is really good stuff. This is really good stuff. But when she's saying it to the jury, it's got to be this convincing. This included Alexander's 2.5 years as Meta's global head of marketing for business and product marketing. In that role, most of her job was around data analysis, and she oversaw the data analytics team, which did forensic work to investigate whether the user traffic on Meta's social media platforms was non-organic. This was relevant to her role because Meta clients, like advertisers, would ordinarily pay for said traffic and therefore had an interest in ensuring it was legitimate. At Meta and previous employers like Ipsos, Alexander looked at various potential indicators of inauthentic activity, including coordination across different regions outside of normal posting times, and the coordinated use of newly created accounts posting problematic content. At her deposition, Alexander described cases she worked on, including a case involving political content posted by foreign actors. Lively claims that Alexander's experience relates exclusively to the detection of automated bots rather than other forms of manipulation, but that is not the case. Alexander testified that her work at Meta was not limited to bots, but also included coordinated users attempting to spike traffic or to manipulate the traffic somehow, which Meta would classify as maleficent activity. She would look for activity that is not based on the usual way that users interact with content across Meta's platforms, based on various factors like temporal oddities and amplification ratios. After all, Meta does not permit users to artificially boost content, whether through bots or coordinated activities performed manually by a network of humans. Alexander noted that coordinated human activity could be detected through temporal analysis, homogeneous content, coordination clusters, and other markers. Lively's criticism is therefore unfounded. Indeed, Alexander has vastly more experience investigating inauthentic activity on social media than Maislin or Coletta, each of whom has none whatsoever. Now we're getting to see, now they're selling this expert to me. She sounds like a really good expert, and I would have been surprised if Wayfarer had not gone all out for an expert to cover this specific area. Because Lively has been hinging on retaliation for the entire time, and it would have been the retaliation, not the sexual harassment itself, that would have, put the Wayfarer on the hook for all the damages. So I'm actually enjoying reading this now. I feel like I'm prepared to kind of take back some of my previous criticism, in that she does sound very knowledgeable and very stellar. But I'm going to maintain my small bit of criticism for she needs to come across like an expert to the jury. If she does not do that, then it is, regardless of her knowledge and her skills, if she does not come across as authentic and knowledgeable and persuasive, then it is going to, the jury are going to get bored. The jury are going to lose interest, and they could even get irritated. Okay, the most that can be said for Maislin is that she wrote a single paper about fake hotel reviews that bears no resemblance to her expert report. Burn. Lively also makes implausible attacks on Alexander's expertise in the quantitative methods she employs, such as statistical analysis. Alexander holds an executive MBA jointly conferred by 3 prestigious business schools, where she studied data analytics as part of the marketing curriculum. As explained above, much of Alexander's work has centered around data analytics, including at Meta. At various other employers, Alexander performed or checked regression analysis on a weekly basis and regularly employed other statistical methods, and she has presented a peer-reviewed paper that used regression analysis across a global dataset. By contrast, in the cases Lively cites, the experts had virtually no relevant expertise. Equally misplaced are Lively's arguments that Alexander has not published in academic journals and is supposedly unfamiliar with the academic literature. There is no requirement that a witness have published scholarly articles on the subject matter at issue to be qualified under Rule 702. An expert may be qualified based on her experience, irrespective of her academic credentials. Indeed, Alexander confirmed that in her professional life, she had applied the concepts discussed in her report and the academic literature, such as temporal synchronization and participant dispersion. But Lively also gives short shrift to Alexander's academic background. Alexander obtained a master's degree from Cambridge, where the use of technology for manipulation across social media was specifically one of her areas of study. She serves on Columbia's faculty and has taught courses at NYU in the field of marketing and technology. She reads journals pertinent to her field. Any disputes as to the strength of her credentials go to the weight, not the admissibility, of her testimony. Purported use of AI. I'm interested to see how they address this. Lively also tries to cast doubt on Alexander's expertise by claiming that AI detection software predicted that some of Alexander's report was AI generated. But Alexander unequivocally testified under oath that she drafted every word of the report and did not use generative AI in any way. Although Lively claims that citations in Alexander's report appear hallucinated, they are citations to real articles where portions of the citations are incorrect, not citations to made-up sources. Okay, now that explains it. That explains it a lot better now. Fucking Lively. I should have known. I should have known if Lively is asserting something, there's probably an element of, dishonesty in it. Moreover, Alexander purported that purported AI checkers are fundamentally unreliable and often rejected in academic settings. Lively provides no basis to dispute Alexander's testimony, particularly since she concedes that Alexander has deep expertise concerning AI models. The court need not even take Alexander at her word, since multiple independent sources corroborate her testimony. According to the University of San Diego Legal Research Center, multiple studies have shown that AI detectors were neither accurate nor reliable. Another article notes that if you feed America's most important legal document, the US Constitution, into a tool designed to detect text written by AI models like ChatGPT, it will tell you that the document was almost certainly written by AI. Dozens of institutions of higher education have banned or discouraged the use of AI detection software, including but not limited to MIT, NYU, and Yale. Just last week, the Washington Post published an opinion piece entitled "Why Honest Students Fear AI Detectors. Chatbot detectors are unreliable and their use threatens honest students." Lively's reliance on such unreliable detection methods is unsurprising, but it is not a basis to exclude Alexander's testimony. Harm opinions. Lively is also wrong to argue that Alexander lacks the qualifications necessary to opine on a lack of commercial harm to Lively's brands. Alexander may not have a degree related to the alcohol or hair care industries, but neither does Maislin, who has a generic background in economics and marketing. Alexander similarly has an academic background in marketing, including an MBA, as well as extensive professional experience in that field, including as global head of marketing at Meta. Yeah, that's fair. Requiring Alexander to have knowledge of the specific business sectors at issue is too high a bar and an overly narrow test of qualifications. Indeed, Maislin's opinions on the purported harm to Lively's brands is not based on any specialized knowledge, just a summary of the company's marketing documents. Rebutting such testimony does not require any deep industry expertise. The court should therefore reject Lively's challenges to Alexander's qualifications. Yeah, I think that's really good. That was very fair. I'm really warming to this expert witness now. It just you just needed someone to sort of sell her, I guess, but she didn't sell herself in her deposition, and unfortunately, I'm not going to be persuaded otherwise because I understand. I know what I'm looking for in her answers, and she was struggling. I'm going to say that she was struggling, and that's that. But now I'm starting to hear it kind of put the way Wayfarer has put it, and yeah, she sounds incredibly knowledgeable. She sounds, especially with the compare and contrast to Maislin and Carlotta as well. Like, hold on, you're saying my expert shit, but yours are even shitter. Well, that's the argument we're getting here. Okay, so now they're going to go on to rebut Lively's attack on Alexander's data, where she said it was unreliable. Okay, Alexander's data is reliable. Alexander's meta-analysis is sound. Lively identifies a discrepancy between the number of social media posts used in Alexander's meta-analysis and the number of posts in Alexander's overall dataset. Lively did not raise this discrepancy at Alexander's deposition or at any point until now. Alexander has investigated the issue and found that the data file used for the meta-analysis was incorrect. Alexander corrected the data file to ensure it matched her dataset, reran her meta-analysis using the corrected data file, and determined that the ultimate outcome was unaffected. So basically, the meta-analysis continues to support her opinions. As before, Alexander saw that the August 2024 spike in social media activity occurred in close proximity across all 5 platforms. Activity declined dramatically across every platform in September 2024, with reductions ranging between 75 and 92%. The temporal decay pattern exhibited a smooth exponential decline characteristic of organic attention cycles. The hourly and day of the week activity patterns were consistent with organic human behavior and inconsistent with bot activity. And there were massive spikes in December 2024 and October 2025, corresponding with the lawsuit filings and ongoing media coverage of litigation. While the data reflects other minor changes, for example, it no longer reflects a strong consistency in the proportion of posting across social media platforms throughout the relevant time period, these changes are not material and do not alter Alexander's opinions as explained further in Alexander's declaration. Accordingly, any error in the meta-analysis has been corrected, and it is, at most, a subject for cross-examination rather than a reason to limit Alexander's testimony. Alexander's sentiment analysis is sound. Lively argues that a similar error affected Alexander's sentiment analysis, but Lively is incorrect. It is true that one of Alexander's bar charts related to sentiment analysis displays numbers of social media posts for January through May 2024 that are inconsistent with the figures in Alexander's dataset. This is, however, merely an error in the bar chart, not an error in the underlying analysis. Alexander confirmed that the sentiment analysis made use of the correct dataset and therefore remains unchanged. Alexander's data gathering is reliable. There is no merit to Lively's claim that Alexander gathered her social media data in an unreliable manner, as explained in her report. Alexander designed a data collection protocol consistent with both academic research standards and industry best practices in digital analytics. Data was collected through publicly available. Oh my goodness! Right. Data was collected through publicly available application programming interfaces or authorized data scraping tools between January 2024 and October 2025, spanning the full temporal window relevant to the allegations in this matter. Just want to quickly read this. This one footnote. Lively insinuates that the earlier data was somehow fabricated because the README file generated by Alexander's assistant refers to synthetic monthly data. That is not the case, since the same page of the README file refers to using the actual data of 43,992 items across all platforms. Okay. To ensure direct comparability with analysis conducted by the plaintiff's experts and to eliminate any suggestion of selective data collection, search parameters were deliberately mirrored to match those described in the plaintiff's expert reports. Queries included variations of Blake Lively, it ends with us, and related hashtags such as hashtag it ends with us, hashtag Blake Lively, and other contextually relevant terms. For instance, Alexander's dataset shows that the following search terms were used to collect content from YouTube. It ends with us. It ends with us drama, Blake Lively, and Blake Lively Justin Baldoni. As a data analytics expert who has designed and implemented digital measurement systems for Fortune 500 companies and major technology platforms, Alexander applied industry standard quality control procedures throughout the data collection process. Lively claims that Alexander provided inadequate detail concerning her selection of search terms and speculates as a result that the searches may have been designed in a biased manner. But elsewhere in Lively's motion, Lively confirms that Alexander used sensible, unbiased searches to collect social media posts related to Lively and the film. Moreover, Lively's own experts, Maislin and Coletta, performed searches in a similar manner using third-party tools and third-party collections of social media posts, which they admit did not result in a perfect collection of all possibly relevant data. Maislin used a data provider called Pulsar Track to obtain posts from X, Reddit, and YouTube and performed searches for keywords based on Miss Lively's name, her known usernames, and the names of her product brands. Maislin did not collect data directly from social media platforms, rather redacted. Maislin acknowledged there were platform-specific availability limitations in Pulsar that limited her ability to collect data. Maislin did not personally oversee all aspects of information gathering relevant to her report. For instance, redacted. Carlotta did not perform any data collection himself and instead left that to his assistants. See, and they bitched on Nicole Alexander for her use of the assistant too. Carlotta's assistants used a third-party tool called Open Measures to collect TikTok videos that contained various hashtags related to Lively, Baldoni, or the film. This Open Measures sweep was imperfect and missed at least one relevant post that Carlotta was able to identify. When collecting TikTok comments, Carlotta looked at only the first 2 screen lengths of comments by scrolling once on each post. Oh my god! Carlotta's assistant did not collect data directly from Reddit and instead used a third-party collection of Reddit data called Project Arctic Shift to obtain posts from a single subreddit called Forma. Carlotta's assistants collected comments on only a single YouTube video related to Lively. Even for this limited collection, Carlotta identified a discrepancy between his data set and the data on a third-party site called archive.org. Seriously, you found a discrepancy between his data and the data on a third-party site on the comments of one single YouTube related to Lively. Yeah, wow. That is not good. As a rebuttal expert, Alexander cannot be held to a higher standard than the experts she is rebutting. No, absolutely not. I do agree with that. I completely agree with that. Alexander's collection of data is sufficiently reliable, especially when measured against the techniques used by Lively's expert. Wow, this opposition is quite brutal. To not one, but 3 of Lively's experts. Alexander's data set is sufficiently large. Lively faults Alexander for using a smaller data set than Maislin did. But by itself, that does not prove that Alexander's 44,000 post data set is unreliable. Exactly, right? So it's quality over quantity. Like, you could have a lot of shit and, a small selection of, really good stuff. If your data set is not good, then having a significant amount of it does not make it better. Alexander's dataset is more representative of the social media conversations concerning Lively, given that it is drawn from 5 major social media platforms, compared to Maislin's 3 platforms. Alexander's dataset also compares favorably to Carlotta's, since Carlotta's TikTok analysis relies on only 1,861 videos, and his YouTube analysis relies on a single video. Oh no. In any event, the case is that Lively sites are inapposite because they involve datasets much smaller than Alexander's. Lively also takes Alexander's deposition testimony out of context to suggest that Alexander used insufficient data. When asked why she limited her opinion 1 to the period between August 2024 through February 2025, it's because the court literally ordered that discovery of the retaliation be limited to that period. Lyman ordered that up to Lively's first amended complaint, which was, I think, the 18th of February. Alexander answered that for this particular opinion, there was not enough volume of data outside that period because there should be an even sample across all networks for purposes of that analysis. Contrary to Lively's suggestions, Alexander did not say that her dataset was inadequate unless it contained an equal sample of posts per platform. Alexander testified that it doesn't have to be exactly the same and that the data she analysed was sufficiently substantive. Nor did Alexander say that she needed more than 20,000 pieces of data for any opinion other than opinion 1, or that she needed 20,000 pieces of data for her baseline period. Lively's argument depends on misreading Alexander's testimony to find contradictions where there are none. Indeed, Alexander's report clearly states that her datasets provide a robust and comprehensive foundation for analysis, with volumes sufficient to detect statistically significant patterns while avoiding the risk of false positives that can arise from small sample sizes. The few duplicate or irrelevant posts are immaterial. Lively identifies only 8 irrelevant social media posts, or 0.02% of the data set, a minuscule proportion that could not have affected any outcome. The duplicate posts amount to less than 8% of the data set and are also immaterial to Alexander's analysis. For instance, Alexander verified that the duplicates shifted the sentiment distribution in her data by a minuscule amount and therefore did not affect her sentiment analysis. In addition, Alexander reran other analyses without the duplicates, and her overall conclusions were unaffected. For instance, she saw a relatively synchronized spike and then decline in activity across platforms consistent with organic user activity. Lively does not explain why the duplicate posts would skew any of Alexander's conclusions. Oh, that's good. That was a really good argument. Okay. Alexander's methodology and application thereof are unreliable. Right, we haven't got too much longer to go now, guys, so I do appreciate this has gone over an hour, which I don't love doing, but this is not really a motion I could have broken up either, so yeah. Alexander's meta-analysis is reliable. Alexander's methodology and application thereof are reliable. Alexander's meta-analysis is reliable. Lively's argument to the contrary is absurd. It boils down to the claim that Alexander is misusing the term meta-analysis to describe her methodology since she is combining different data sets but not the results of several independent studies. This is a debate of semantics, not substance. Regardless of terminology, Alexander's methodology is reliable. As explained above, Maisling combined datasets from different platforms so she could analyze the similarities or differences in social media activity across platforms. This meta-analysis of cross-platform patterns yielded results consistent with organic user activity rather than coordinated manipulation. Lively does not question the substance of this analysis. Alexander's signature comparison methodology is reliable. Lively claims Alexander lacks an adequate basis for identifying signatures of inauthentic or organic activity on social media platforms. As explained above, however, Alexander has extensive professional experience ferreting out inauthentic activity at Meta where advertising revenue was on the line if the ad traffic was inauthentic. In addition, it is perfectly reasonable for Alexander to cite academic literature concerning the detection of automated bots, as bots are a major form of social media manipulation, and it is extremely difficult to artificially boost social media content without using automated tools. Lively also claims that Alexander's report parrots some of the text concerning diagnostic signatures that her assistant included in the accompanying README files. But it is entirely unsurprising that Alexander and her assistant would use similar language to describe the data, and it is irrelevant to the reliability of Alexander's methodology. Alexander consistently testified that regardless of what her assistant wrote in the README files, Alexander's expert report consists entirely of her own opinions. Alexander is not a conduit for her assistant's opinions or anyone else's. Yep, that's that. Alexander's sentiment methodology is reliable. Lively asserts that Alexander failed to disclose sufficient detail concerning her use of the BERT model to classify the sentiment of social media posts, but Alexander provided ample detail and was questioned at length on her use of this model at her deposition. Lively's experts could have recreated Alexander's analysis by running the most recent BERT model over Alexander's dataset to classify the posts as positive, negative, or neutral toward Lively. To the extent they required more information, Lively should have moved to compel, while expert discovery remained open. Yeah, that's actually very fair. That's a fair comment. She's never failed to break her ankle rushing to move to compel Wayfarer over some shit or other. So she didn't do it this time. So it clearly was not that significant. That's what Wayfarer are trying to say, and I think that's a fair argument. Instead, Lively obtained an order compelling Alexander to testify at a second deposition concerning an entirely different subject. Evidently unconcerned that she was unprepared to address Alexander's use of the BERT model. Lively has no basis to complain of any prejudice. That's fair. Lively also claims that the sentiment analysis must have been inaccurate because, while Figure B3 reports classifying nearly 60 out of 100 social media items from January 2024 as positive, the dataset contains only 19 items total from that month. Her argument appears to rest on a misunderstanding of Figure B3, which does not report numbers of posts, but instead reports percentages. For example, 60% of posts, not 60 posts. Lively argues that Alexander fails to explain why the time series component of her sentiment analysis used keywords, which Lively calls a dictionary-based approach. Alexander explains, however, that the time series analysis involved a forecast of sentiment scores calculated on the presence of positive or negative keywords in each post, relying solely on a three-class taxonomy of posts as positive, negative, or neutral would have been an inferior approach because the regression analysis required more granular information. Alexander's choice of date ranges is reliable. Lively claims that it was arbitrary for Alexander to select February 2025 as the endpoint of her analysis, even though she collected data from March 2025 through October 2025 as well. This choice was far from arbitrary. However, since Alexander was asked to rebut Maislin's report and Maislin did not collect any data from after February 2025. No! Oh my goodness. Her own expert didn't collect any data from after February 2025. Lively also criticizes Alexander for collecting data spanning January 2024 to October 2025 based on the volume of data that was available rather than based on any methodological reason. It is unclear, however, why a broad data collection of this sort would undermine the reliability of Alexander's conclusions, and Lively does not offer any explanation. Moreover, Maislin acknowledged that she limited her collection of data based on what was available rather than for another principled reason. Something's redacted. Lively also makes an opaque, incomprehensible argument about how Alexander's date ranges hypothetically might change, depending on whether the alleged manipulation campaign began on August 2nd or August 9th. Lively fails to explain how these hypothetical possibilities manifested themselves in any actual error on Alexander's part. Moreover, to the extent that there was any error, it was shared by Maislin, whose date ranges were not strictly tied to the start of the alleged manipulation campaign. Maislin stated that her before August 2024 period includes data only up to July 24th, 2024, ending 1 week prior to the potential campaign's onset, even though that cutoff date would exclude relevant data from the baseline period, such as anti-Lively sentiment that preceded the alleged campaign. Alexander's choice of platforms is reliable. Lively suggests that Alexander's choice of 5 social media platforms was arbitrary, but this is nonsense. Alexander chose these platforms because they are the primary digital ecosystems for entertainment industry discourse, and indeed Maislin and Clutter collectively analysed 4 of the 5 same platforms. Moreover, analysing multiple platforms allowed Alexander to perform the cross-platform meta-analysis described above, which provides an additional methodological justification. I'm loving this argument. I'm really now getting sold on this expert. Now, with this kind of, hold on a minute, but, you're saying this about our expert, hold on, but our expert done exactly what your expert did, or our expert actually did more and did better than your expert for these reasons. Now, yes, I'm not so worried by this expert witness anymore. I'm not, because Lively's own experts sound like a car crash at this point. Alexander's harm opinions are reliable. Lively asserts without much explanation that Alexander applied no methodology in reaching her harm opinions. But Alexander cited several factors in her analysis, including the internal business records of Lively's companies, admissions made in the report of Lively's damages experts, and other commercial metrics, as well as the results of Alexander's analysis of social media sentiment toward Lively. To the extent there is any deficiency in Alexander's opinions concerning Lively's brands, it is equally, if not more, applicable to Maislin's opinions on that subject, which rest almost entirely on internal company documents and do not involve the application of any expertise. So that come from Alexandra Shapiro. Wow, that was impressive. That was really, really good. I think that was a masterclass as well in the power of the persuasiveness that an attorney can bring. People who've followed me long enough, watched enough of my videos, know how much I harp on about you can have the law on your side and the evidence on your side, but a heavy chunk of winning a case at trial is what we call the moot, which is the legal arguments, how the evidence is presented, and what the lawyer does, court etiquette, so on and so forth. And this entire document, right, because I was very much, oh my God, they're just giving away their case to Lively here. What are they doing with this expert after reading her deposition? And I will say, I haven't seen the depositions of Maislin or Clutter or Humphreys. I think I might have seen a small bit of Humphreys, but I haven't seen their depositions. And some of them, I haven't even seen their reports. And I haven't seen Nicole Alexander's report. But I was very much, oh no, I'm not happy about this. After going through Nicole Alexander's entire deposition, I'm not so now. I'm really not. I think she certainly is presented as a very capable, adept witness who, does a really good job rebutting, because that is her job, right? Is to rebut Lively's experts. She's not here to, write a report that proves anything on Wayfarer's behalf. She just needs to dismantle Lively's experts, who do have that task of having to prove damages, that social manipulation took place, that, industry standards weren't followed, blah, 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 etc., etc. And obviously at trial, these attorneys will be there too, and they will be doing the examination. Lively's team will be doing cross-examination, and then they'll get to go to redirect, which is where they basically go and tidy up anything that cropped up on cross-examination. If they can just help Alexander to be able to, to kind of prep her for the trial, then I think, that she's going to be an absolutely excellent witness. But I haven't seen the deposition testimony of Maislin or Carlotta, so I don't know how they performed. They may have performed even worse. we will see. I enjoyed this though, so hopefully you did, and hopefully I know there was quite a I wasn't alone in my sort of criticism of Nicole Alexander. There were a lot of sentiment from people who watched those videos I did on the deposition, felt the same. I had some amazing people did come in and explain a little bit more about what it is she's doing or what she's trying to say, which was really helpful for context. And like I said, I always kept my mind open that she was really good and very, very knowledgeable in her field of expertise. But she's just got to be able to kind of translate that to the jury, and that's, I think, where Wayfarer, if they can hone in on that and just tidy it up, then they should have no problem whatsoever. So, okay. Now I'm on to, I'm going to do, it's one big large document, Lively's opposition to Wayfarer's Dalbert motions, but I'm going to go by expert to expert in singular videos, because I'm not doing one whole video for 179 pages. I will probably get them uploaded though tomorrow now,